In the last video, we added some objects and then added some constraints and connected them to the code in a really simple way by giving them different IDs. In this video, though, we have not connected the button, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to connect the button, but since we're only using the button for its onClick function, we're going to talk about how we access that here. So the onClick function, this is accessed anytime that the button is tapped, is going to run a function. Well, right now, there's nothing to run in here, so we're going to connect this to the code. I'm going to go to my mainActivity.Kotlin file, and I'm going to write a new function. So a function is basically an action that's run when it is called. There's a lot of different types of functions, and we're going to be working with them throughout the semester. Right now, we actually have a function already built in. We have one called function onCreate, and onCreate is run instantly whenever our entire project basically opens up this view. Whenever it opens up this activity, we run this onCreate and these things happen. We're not going to worry about these too much for now, but we're going to write a new function. So I'm going to write the word fun, which is saying this is a function. Remember before we've used things like val and var. So fun is saying, hey, this is a function. I'm going to give it a name. I can give it whatever name I want, but I like to call it button tapped. And we usually call functions the name of the object and then the actual action. So the action in past tense specifically. So I'm saying button tapped, it's been tapped, this function is going to happen. So then I open up a parentheses and it automatically gives me a back parentheses as well. And I'm going to write the word view, view. We may get an error here and that's okay. And then I'm going to give myself a curly brace, which also gives me a little back curly brace, and just hit return or enter on your keyboard. So we can see this structure here where we have this function called onCreate. It's followed by a parentheses, and then that's followed by a curly brace that has a connecting curly brace here. And these two curly braces indicate that anything in between those spots, right, anything right here is part of this function. When this function is called, when it's asked, hey, onCreate, run, this is the stuff that's happening, okay? This is the code of the function. This part of the function, the part that's happening in the parentheses, basically these are parameters or arguments that are fed to the function that enable it to work properly. Right now we have a function, so we said fun, we gave it a name, button tapped, and we fed it some parameters. We fed it a parameter called view. And right now this isn't working because we haven't actually imported our view content properly. So let's fix that. I'm going to show you one of the coolest features of Android Studio. On Windows, I think this is done with Alt-Enter. Let's double check that. Let's see. On Windows, it's going to be Alt-Enter, yeah. And on Mac, it's Option-Return. So I'm going to hold down Option and hit Return. And that asks me a bunch of different ways to solve this problem. So I have clicked in this problem, and I just did Option Return. And it asks me, how do you want to solve this issue? And if I click Import, boom, fix my problem. That is so cool, especially if you've ever done programming in the past. Basically what this was wanting is it's saying, hey man, we can't resolve what this view thing is. That's because we haven't actually told it that that view is part of this Android bundle called View that we need to import. Right here, it's giving us some squiggly lines. The squiggly lines can be ignored safely. If it's red, it can't be ignored. The squiggly lines, don't worry about it. So let's just go back to our mainActivity.xml and click on our button. And what we've declared now is a function called button tapped, and we're saying, hey, you're part of the view, you're part of the activity. If I go back to my main activity, I go to that onClick area in my attribute editor, boom, button tapped appears, and I can click it. So now what I'm saying is, anytime that this button tapped is tapped, anytime that someone touches it, run button tapped. So we've now connected that button to our code, and look, it lights up because it understands, hey, I'm connected. It gets all excited. So that is the very basics on how we connect a function to a piece of our code. The next step is to pull text from here and display it here.